Erica and Sharon are sisters who began their grief journey in 2006 when Erica's 10-year-old son Austin drowned. Together, they participated in a grief education program, were so moved by this experience, they studied and became specialists so they could help the brokenhearted find recovery. In 2015, tragedy struck their family once again when Erica's oldest son Donovan was killed in a motorcycle accident. Erica and Sharon are committed to sharing their experiences of love, loss, and healing through this podcast. Now your grief specialists, Sharon and Erica.
Hey guys, welcome. I want you to know that today is about you, okay? So today is about you. One of the things that Erica and I know is that the hardest thing you could do, even just today, was walk through the store and come and see us. And we want to thank each and every one of you for that. I want to go over the agenda a little bit of what today is going to be like. We teach an educational program on grief and loss. And so what we're doing today is giving you an example of what that is, giving you a little bit of a feel for what we do. We're going to start with our story. We're going to share our story with you. And all throughout the day, I'll be pointing out where we will be working in our grief program. We're going to take a break around 10:45. And when we come back, we're going to do a little grief share. So we will do some grief support today as well. But I want to give you just quickly a little agenda of how we're going. This is about you, so if we end up going off the beaten path, that's okay too. Welcome. And I want you to know that I'm so glad you're all here, because if even just one of you showed up, I was still going to do this event today. So I'm glad you guys are here. The thing that's so crazy about grief, you're going to change it for me, is that we're never taught how to grieve properly. We are never taught how to grieve. And in the moment that I needed it the most, I had no tools. In 2006, I was sitting in a realtor's open house, and my youngest daughter at the time, Brittany, called me, and she screamed into the phone. She screamed, "Mom, I lost Austin." And I could hear the panic in her voice, and the thought that went through my head was, "Be strong." And my knees literally buckled and I fell to the ground. And the whole time I was on the ground, I was trying to sound like I was strong and being her mom. And I said, "Honey, he's there. He's just run off. I'm sure he's run off." To this day, I know that she doesn't know she used the words, "I lost." It started a 3 hours of hell that I will never want to relive ever again. But we found at the end of the 3 hours that Austin had actually drowned with the family on a family vacation. I had to, that's my Austin, guys. I had to call Erica and tell her what had happened. But on the way to her house, I realized something. I realized that I had never used the word grief. I had never used the word grief where it pertained to me. This wasn't supposed to happen to me. Loses a 10-year-old child. Okay, here's the crazy part. I literally thought that that happened to people in the Midwest. It happens other places. It doesn't happen here. So what I perceived as grief and what I perceived my job was to be Erica's support and to help her through it. I am a woman. I'm strong. I can figure this out. And so I started doing this thing where I was absolutely being strong for her. I was literally trying to hold her up. It's almost as if we were going underwater, and I was literally just pushing her up. Erica, bless her heart, I was just able to get her out some days to this level. But the entire time that I was trying to push her up, I was drowning underneath. It was about 8 months after Austin passed away that we came across the program called Grief Recovery. And I signed myself up and I signed Erica up. And without much instruction or really understanding what was going to be going on, sort of like Shelley did, we went to the Grief Recovery program. But here's the thing I want you guys to understand. I still showed up at that program thinking I was coming for Erica. Literally thinking I was coming for her. It looked just like this. I sort of walked her in, I set her down, and I was like, this is my sister. She's grieving. Please fix her. It was almost exactly like that. We sat in a room very much like this, and our instructor that day went around and asked each and every one of us what we were doing there. And when she got to me, I literally fell apart. I couldn't even talk, because I realized that that was the first time that anyone had ever asked me about me where Austin was concerned. No one had ever asked me. The questions were always something like this: how's Erica doing? How are the kids doing? How's Lewis? No one ever said to me, Sharon, how are you? How's your grief today? When we finished the program, I called her up on the phone. She was doing the dishes. It was the day after. I'll never forget this as long as I live. And I didn't want to say to her, hey, I feel better. I am not grieving your son anymore. I just knew that I felt as if the knife that was stabbed clear through my heart was removed. That's exactly what it felt like. I felt like the knife was removed. The hole will forever be there where Austin was, but that pain. And so I started talking to her on the phone, and I said, hey, I think that thing worked. Those were my exact words. She said, the grief recovery? I said, yes. And she screamed at the top of her lungs, hell yeah, it worked. And when she said that, the thought that came through my mind was, oh my gosh, we have to help people. And it was at that moment that Eric and I signed up in 2007 and became grief specialists. I want to introduce to you my hero, my sister. This is Erica. We walked this journey together. We are here. We really want to help people mend their broken hearts, and by bringing our story to you, I think is the best way for us to do that. And this is Erica Honore. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you guys for coming. We're so excited. It does seem strange to, like Shelley said, to be excited about grief, but because of our experience and what we have been through, we're always so happy to be able to pass this message on to other grievers and touch other hearts. And one of the things I like to start with is by saying, I'm so sorry it's taken us so long to find each other. I'm so sorry if you've been living in pain all this time until we got to be with you. Because hopefully from this day forward, you won't feel like this anymore, and there'll be hope in your heart. So our story started out very much the same. These are my boys, Donovan and Austin. At the time Austin passed away, Donovan was 12 years old. Lewis, my husband, and I were separated and had been separated for 5 years. We were just starting to mend fences at this time, so I was going to go on the trip. But at the last minute, I thought, I really wanted to be like Miss Independent. So I had just gotten a new apartment, and I said, you know what? I'm going to stay back, get the apartment set up for the boys, so when you come back, they'll have everything done, and it'll be kind of like a mommy weekend, like I could have a break. So they went on without me. When Sharon, it started out that I had a girlfriend come over with me to help me unpack. And at the last minute, we're like, let's go get mani-pedis. I mean, it was like, we can get back to this packing later. I left my cell phone at home. So this was 2006. I wasn't as dependent on my cell phone as we are now. Like now I can't go 5 minutes without it. So when we got to the place, I was like, oh, I left my cell phone. But, I'm like, it'll be fine. And I remember getting the mani-pedi, and we were talking about maybe going out to dinner later and getting a nice bottle of wine. And there was just this zen, I was in this zen space. I was laying back with my hands like this, letting my nails dry, and just relaxing, like truly relaxing. We get back to the apartment, and I get my cell phone. I have 19 missed calls. So for us, that means bad news. So I say to my girlfriend, I said, I have 19 missed calls. Something bad has happened. And she goes, oh, no, it's fine. She's always the optimist. So I call my parents' house, and our other sister, Charlene, answers the phone. And I could hear that nervous, honey, where are you? And I said, I'm home. I just was getting my nails done. And then there was like some shuffling of the phone, and I didn't know what was going on. So then I'm like, my dad died. So I'm like, they don't know how to tell me. That's what I'm thinking. So Sharon gets on the phone, and she says, Erica, they can't find Austin. And I said, okay. So I've been there. We had been going to this same spot in Lake Havasu since they were toddlers. So I knew exactly the layout. I said, well, did they check the park across the street? Because they love tractors and all these little things. They had all that there. She's like, I'm pretty sure they're looking. She says, we're going to get a flight out. Just pack a bag and come over here. So I'm like, okay. Get off the phone. And my mind is going, and I thought, it's almost going to be dark. I'm like, they just need to find him before it gets dark. So I'm like trying to be calm and walking around, and my girlfriend is just trying to say, it's fine, it's going to be okay. And she calls me back. By this time, they've gotten the news. I still don't know. She calls me back. She says, we're going to come to you. Don't leave. I said, okay. So she comes to the door. It's Sharon, her husband, Tony, and our other sister, Charlene. And I look at her, and she says, they found him. So for half a second, I thought, oh, thank God. And then she said he drowned right after. And this was where it's like you have that out-of-body experience that people talk about, but you don't realize you've had it until, like, looking back on it. But I just took off running in my apartment, and I'm screaming the scream that you hear on TV. I'm doing that, but don't even realize that I am. And Tony just grabs me in his arms, and he just starts praying. And it was like shock. You're in shock, you're numb. You don't even know, like, how is this really my life? You know, how did this happen? Like she said, how did this happen to us? We have such a large family. We had been going to, my first funeral, I was 6 years old. So we weren't strangers to death. But this is the first child in our family that had ever passed away. So right after, Sharon and I were on the phone every day telling our story. And she would say, you know, well, I remember this happened, and she would tell me about the, Brittany thing, and then I would say, well, you guys got to the door. And we did this over and over, day after day, without even realizing we were getting stuck in our story. We had no direction. We didn't know where to go after the story. So we just kind of did that. And then the other thing we had were the stages of grief. She said, well, what stage are you in today? Sometimes I didn't feel like a stage, so I would just say something. I'm like, I don't know, maybe denial? And she's like, but you know he's really dead, right? And I'm like, yeah, I know that. So I'm like, okay, that doesn't fit either. I don't know where I'm at. So we did this for a while. She got a lot of information, and I worked in social work, so I was also getting the same information. You need to go to support groups. You need to go to support groups. So she would find these groups, and she said, hey, try this one. The thing about the support group is it's a bigger scene where you get stuck in your story. You show up week after week, and they just tell the same sad story over and over. And then I would leave feeling so sorry for them with their broken hearts. There was no healing for me. So I did that 2 or 3 times, and I said, please stop helping me. I don't want to do this anymore. So she got grief recovery. She got turned on to grief recovery, and she signed me up. And she says, hey, I found this. My church is bringing this program in, and I want you to do it. And I said, no, thank you. Because after trying the traditional route, I figured there's nothing else out there for me. I'm just going to be a mom with a broken heart. And she's like, well, my church already paid for you. So it was quite some time later when I realized that was a little lie. So I went. Yes, I'm thankful for it now. But in the moment, I was like, ugh. I went, but I didn't go because I thought I was going to get healing. I just went out of obligation because I felt, obligated because the church had paid. So within the first 5 minutes of the facilitator starting the class, she totally grabbed my attention. She said, the 5 stages of grief do not apply to grievers. And I was like, what? Oh my God, okay. And then she started to explain more. The 5 stages of grief were designed for people who were actually dying. That was the process they were going through as they were dying. So then it became more clear. And I said this out loud. I said, thank God, because I thought I was doing it wrong. And I really did. I felt like I wasn't doing this grief thing right because nothing seemed to fit. As time went on, the class went on, we got more and more involved. The education that she was giving us and just breaking down everything we thought we knew about grief and rebuilding it with what was actually correct really was, it was priceless. And at the moment when she called me and she said, "Do you think this worked?" I mean, and I was like, when I screamed, "Hell yeah," I really meant it, because I didn't feel the heavy weight of the pain of my broken heart when I got up the morning after the class. And I was so, like I said, excited. And we were like, we need to tell everyone about this. And I'm like, yes. So we rushed to go get certified, 2007. And we are just like getting out there and trying to spread this word, because it's so amazing to feel good. It really is, to genuinely feel good in your heart and in your space. So we start doing programs. In 2013, Lewis, Jordan, and I moved to Texas. Donovan, my oldest son, is at this time 20. He decides to stay behind because he's going to make it in California. And I'm like, okay, you'll be in Texas pretty soon. So I waited, and he got to Texas. We got there 2013. He got there 2014. It was amazing. He took to Texas like he was a natural cowboy. He would say, y'all. I mean, even before I was saying it, it was really funny. So at this time, I had put my grief recovery stuff on the shelf because I wanted to acclimate myself to the community. Jordan was only 10, and I started substitute teaching just to build a base and get to know the people, let them get to know me before I started spouting out, hey, this grief stuff is amazing. I really wanted them to know who I was. So I decided in 2015, Sharon and I had talked, I said, I really think I'm going to pick up this grief thing again. I want to get recertified just as a refresher. So she found there was a class at the end of June in Dallas, and we went, and it was so much fun. We're odd ducks, so we, are a little sarcastic humor, but I mean, we just had a great group of women, and at the time, I was really, really struggling with accepting Donovan as a young adult. He's 20 years old, and he just had a different plan for his life than I had, so we were butting heads quite a bit. So that weekend, I decided to work on my relationship with Donovan. And it really helped because it took those buttons that really just made my head explode. There was no reaction. We had this big dinner after the class. It was like a full weekend. We had this big dinner, and Sharon, Lou, were flying back to California. We're going to San Diego. Lou had work. Sharon was coming back to get our process started. And Donovan stayed behind in Texas. He was going to feed our dogs and get the mail and do all that stuff. So 2 days after the conference, Sharon calls me yet again to tell me that Donovan's been killed in a motorcycle accident. I wish that I could tell you all of those tools that I had were there to help me. They were not. I actually didn't even want to be involved with the tools. I didn't want to talk about anything about grief. I didn't want to share how I felt. I felt like I had been struck by lightning for the second time. Donovan was 20, passed away 2 weeks shy of his 21st birthday. We were planning his birthday party when he passed away. He was my friend. I talked to him on the phone every single day. So not only am I grieving another child, I'm grieving my friend. We had all these inside jokes. We made fun of Lewis all the time. We made fun of Jordan all the time. He was my friend. So I resisted everything that had to do with grief. I resisted the process. I did all the things I knew I wasn't supposed to do. I had a glass of wine in my hand at 9 a.m. I had a prescription for Xanax from my doctor. I was engaging in anything that I could that would help me to not feel the pain I felt when I had to look Lewis in the eyes every morning, because that was the most painful start to my day. I have a son, Jordan, that is not Lewis's. Donovan and Austin were Lewis's only biological children. So the bloodline is lost with Donovan. He loves Jordan to no end, but they're not his biological son. So I start to go dark. I continue with excessive wine drinking, isolating. everything I know I'm not supposed to do, I'm doing, because I just feel horrible. And almost to the first anniversary, I go almost a full year. And Lewis was my sounding board. He was my one person that I knew felt as bad as I felt. So he and I were really talking a lot, but he could see I was going dark also. He would call me and say, "What are you doing?" And I'd say, "Oh, I'm doing laundry." He travels for work, so he's not there with me during the week. I'd been in bed all day with the covers over my head. I'd get up, take a shower, and change my clothes right before I had to go pick up Jordan from school. And he would say, "Mom, what'd you do?" And I'd make up a whole list of stuff that I never did. So that went on for a long time. And right at the 1-year anniversary, Lewis said something to me, and I said something back about, "Well, you know, I'm just so sad." And he says, "You have to use your tools. You have these tools. I need you. You can't fall apart on me." And I felt betrayed. I ran away, and I ran into the bathroom, and I just dropped to my knees, and I started sobbing. And that night, the whole house is sleeping. I'm in my kitchen, sitting at the dining room table, and it's all dark, and I start writing this Facebook tribute on Donovan's page. I used to write to him all the time on his Facebook. And I mean, ugly cry, snot coming down. And one of the things I wrote was, "How can I help people if I can't even help myself? I feel lost. I don't know what to do without you." And Sharon gets up the next morning and she reads it and she said, "Honey, why didn't you tell me?" And I said, "Because I didn't want to do anything about it. If I told you, you'd try to make me, do the work." But I realized then that I had to do the work. She flew to my rescue yet again, and we worked the entire weekend. And from that point, I was really able to start picking up the pieces and getting my life back on track. And that was exactly what I needed in that moment.
Tell them about the 20 loads of laundry.
Well,
I did 20 loads of laundry that weekend.
She's like, "You really weren't doing laundry." Well,
It was
it
no
was a
joke.
good excuse.
That's how we got here, you guys. And that guy, unbelievable. But the two of them propel us to helping. We want to help every broken heart and get our story out there. I'm going to do some teaching now about what we teach in grief recovery. So we're going to go back between our story and what we actually teach in grief recovery. We have some commitments that we all have to commit to. We have a commitment to total honesty with no intent to deceive. What does that mean? You can only tell the truth about yourself based on your own personal recollection. Eric and I, there's different points in our story where we have different aspects of it because they were my nephews. They were her sons. But I can tell the truth about Donovan. We have to tell the truth about what's in our heart, but we also have to tell the truth about the other person, right? I also want you to know that it's content-free. What does that mean? I don't need to know every aspect of your story with your loved one in order for you to recover. You don't have to say it out loud. If you can't, it's okay. But you need to at least make a note of it and know that this really happened in order for you to recover from it. We have absolute confidentiality. Grief recovery is completely confidential. No one can call me today and find out if you've attended the class, what you're working on. We keep it completely confidential, but we all agree in this room that whatever is said in this room today gets to stay completely confidential. We ask that you don't use alcohol or drugs when you're coming to class or when we're online working or if we're doing any of the grief work. We want the raw, bitter, broken you. We also know that a lot of times we will run to drugs and alcohol to help us at different times in our life, especially when our heart is broken. We ask that when we're doing the sharing portion, you're not taking any notes. I mean, could you imagine if someone was talking and sharing and really sharing their story and you're writing notes? We want people to feel welcomed and comforted. So only when we're doing the grief part. We ask when we're doing our grief work that you're on time for every class and that you attend every class. It's by mutual agreement that we don't attend a class. These are the commitments you make to come to grief recovery. Does everybody agree with these commitments, even for today, for the absolute confidentiality and total honesty? Yeah, that'd be awesome. We don't judge others or ourselves when we're grieving. Shelley lost her husband. Erica lost her sons. I lost my nephews. I have no idea what Erica has experienced in her loss. I'm not going to judge her. I'm not going to compare my losses to her. We're not going to minimize our loss. I have a lot of times when people go there, they go to get emotional, and they're like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It was just my dog. We don't want you minimizing it and pushing it down. We don't apologize for human feelings. They just are. Also, by saying that, I want you to know this is so important and it's huge. Tears may or may not be a sign of grief. You absolutely can be grieving, your heart can be absolutely broken, and you may not be shedding one tear. And that is so important because we get a lot of clients that said, I can't cry. I haven't cried, or I'm not crying today. That does not mean your heart is not broken, and I can prove it to you. When Austin died, I had to go to Macy's and get some stuff to wear to the funeral. And I was literally walking around Macy's, and the thought that was going through my head was, I'm buying clothes for my nephew's funeral, and nobody in here knows it, and I wasn't shedding a tear, but my heart was absolutely broken. We don't hand tissue. I will never pat you, rub you, or burp you. What does that mean? If Shelley were to have a moment right now and really start to break down, and I ran over here and I grabbed some tissue in the middle of her sharing, and I started handing her tissue, what is that signaling to her? Number one, it's signaling, that's enough. Can you stop that right now? Number two, it's going to be signaling, hey, I can't handle this. Can you stop? And so we're all grown adults in here, except our beautiful little visitor there. If we choose to sit and let tears and snot run down our nose, that's okay. Just let it be. Just accept those emotions. Allow those emotions. We do another thing. We do a grief recovery hug. Shelley, can you come here for a second? We do a grief recovery hug, and it goes something like this. I am not going to rub her or pat her or try and make her feel better. I'm just going to give her a hug, if the hug is safe. When I feel Shelley's shoulders kind of drop down, I know she's done with the hug, and I can release her. But we will always offer the hug. Can I give you a hug? Yes, but I'm not going to rub you or pat you. I'm not even going to rub on your leg. You don't need that, and I don't need to stop whatever's going on with you, okay? And then we ask that you keep an open mind today. We're teaching you portions of our grief recovery. Just keep an open mind and be willing to share when it's time. Okay. Before we get to sharing our grief, I want to show you one other thing. Here's my heart. What happens in grief recovery is that, what happens in grief is this. I had some losses that had occurred in my life, and they were literally just losses that were there over time. We have them. We know for a fact that we have them. But I didn't have time to deal with them. I was a mom, raising 3 kids, busy, doing my real estate business, doing everything that I could do. It's almost like, you know that you have this little junk that's left over in your heart, but you literally can't deal with it. I literally had to cut it off and just be right there about it. And then I got the call that Austin had died. And it was literally as if someone had taken a knife and stabbed me clear through my heart. But what we know for a fact in grief recovery is that that thing didn't just have a little hole. It was like a huge hole. But I was walking around not knowing what to do with this thing. The other thing that we know for a fact is that this pain will start to grab up the other pain that's in our heart. It will start to grab it. It almost grows like the blob. It became this big thing that I almost didn't know what to do with. I almost couldn't function on a daily basis.